I'll start with the reading of the meeting agenda and kick it off. So in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 11, notice is hereby given that the Bolton Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a continuation of public hearing on Tuesday, March 19, 2019 at 7 p.m. in the public room of Bolton Public Library at 730 Main Street, Bolton, Mass. To hear and act upon the application of Still River Road Development LLC and Shenanigans and Farrell PC. The applicant is seeking a comprehensive permit for proposed housing development to be located in Bolton's residential zoning district on Still River Road, identified on the Assessors Map, Parcel 8B, as Parcel 32, approximately 6.68 acres. The applicant is seeking a comprehensive permit to construct 8 units of homeownership housing pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40B. The development consists of 4 2-unit duplex-style buildings located on 2 lots, each containing 2 duplex buildings. In accordance with Mass General Law 40B, the development will contain 2 affordable units. Tonight's agenda topics: we'll get an update from the applicant. We'll review items such as comments from the Board of Health, Concom, wetland data from Ecotech, waivers, condominium documents, architectural design review comments, and we'll probably start a review of the draft decision that we have on the way. So with that, off to the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. Douglas Duchesne. What we'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, is we're going to report to what we've done since the last meeting. Attorney Costa has a few things he wants to say as well. First of all, I did provide the board, I believe, a week before last, commentary or a response to both the Board of Selectmen's letter as well as an email that was written by the Conservation Commission. Mr. Fesnola in his report suggested that we respond to those in writing, so we did that. And then there are a couple of plan changes and a quick change to one waiver that I'll let Mr. Donahoe speak to, and then, as I said, Attorney Costa can pick up from there.
Good evening, board members. My name is Seth Donahoe with Ducharme & Dillis. We're assisting with the engineering and surveying work related to the site. At our last meeting, we were requested to have a couple plan clarifications, and we have made those, submitted full-size sets to the board for your review. In summary, there was a question regarding the grading at the rear of Unit 8, which is in this corner of the site. The grade lines were correct. There was an errant label left over from one of the prior revisions, so we've cleared that up. It's on all your plan sheets now. There's no changing to the actual grading. We've just cleared up the numbering on the grade lines themselves. The other request we were asked to make is to add the area of alterations between the 25-foot and 100-foot buffer zone. Previously, we had provided you this exhibit plan, which highlighted the areas of the proposed alterations within 25 feet of the wetlands. Again, there's no alterations to the wetlands at this site. We provided all those numbers both in letter form and on your plan sheet now. And the final thing is there was some confusion over which version of the Board of Health regulations were current at the last meeting and which version the waivers we had requested were related on. The Board of Health did revise their regulations in 2018. We had a brief discussion over some of the older regulations, but our prior submittals and requests were relevant to the current regulations, and those are reflected in our current letters as well. We did receive a draft letter from the Conservation Commission earlier today, and they requested some clarification on one of the waivers we had requested. So I brought a letter tonight to circulate to you, which just clarifies that. As we've done with the individual units, we specified exact distances to different structures. We had one waiver that requested alterations within a set distance for a group of structures, subsurface utilities. And so now we've called those out to individual structures. So I'll give each of you those. Thank you. I'll give you the PDF version of that. I'll CC you as well. So as you review the letter, as I said briefly, we had previously requested both in code section 233, which is the wetlands regulations and rules. We had requested to allow the access driveway, retaining walls, utilities, and stormwater infrastructure to be constructed within 25 feet of the edge of wetlands as depicted on our plan set. We've adjusted that to specify exact distances to each of those items in there. So we have 36 feet for the driveway from edge of wetlands, retaining walls 25 feet from edge of wetlands, subsurface utilities to be located 15 feet from edge of wetlands. That is generally limited to the cable utilities, which are originating from the utility pole within the right-of-way, and they'll be underground. And then we also have allowed stormwater infrastructure to be within 38 feet from the edge of wetlands. And we had previously discussed some improvements within Still River Road right-of-way. There is a drain outfall right here and a small basin. And we also have some manhole structures in the access driveway. The infiltration area itself needs to be offset 50 feet from the wetlands, and we exceed that distance on that area. So I hope that provides the clarification that the commission was looking for. If you have any questions on the revised materials we submitted, I'm happy to address those.
So they meet the state requirements.
We do.
But it's just all with regard to the local bylaw.
Correct.
Question on the letter? So on the Ecotech, I think you said we're going to status quo, no new information, no.
No, although with the weekend we had with the rain and the weather, we're hopeful they're going to get out there and finish up.
But it's still the situation, well, not the, but the situation of they're not going to buy from the reports or data that have been reports.
No, I provided you a written response to that request.
Okay. I would just summarize it because not everyone's seen that. Do you have any questions there? Any
Yeah.
submittals or?
I do, I guess, on the Equifax data forms, I'm still trying to understand why they can't provide the data forms if those wetland flags have been completed. I mean, you're not asking for the data forms for the part of the wetland that hasn't been delineated at this point, but the portions that have been put on the plan, I don't see why they couldn't provide the data forms for that. That should be complete at this point.
There is a section of in the field that is offset a greater distance than the closest wetland flags that was not able to be delineated due to the weather. And all that information will be provided with an ANRAD that will be filed with the Conservation Commission. And we'd rather submit complete data as opposed to partial data at this time. To that point too, we've defined the setbacks to all the structures on the site to an exact distance. The Conservation Commission has made it very clear their position on the project, and I don't understand what would change by providing that data now. The distances are what they are. We've defined them to an exact distance for each unit, each structure, and we will provide all that data when it goes through the process with the Conservation Commission. There's no intent to bypass that. That would just be the appropriate form to provide that information.
Aquifer Protection Design Review Board. So they had some, I think there was an email Did that get to the?
It did, I sent it to Doug, yeah.
Yeah, so you'll recall that some weeks ago, I provided a letter to the design review board where I went over their suggested changes and gave them the exact listing of the requests or suggestions that we had integrated into our design, or agreed to integrate into the design. We did have an updated rendering, just a colored rendering. I think what the design review board is asking for are updated elevation plans, which, as you know, are two-dimensional, drawings of the structures themselves. Well, we haven't had those done yet. We didn't update them, so they're not available. However, as you can imagine, we have every intention of doing that if we are granted a permit, because we'll have to do full construction drawings to move forward. So it would not be unusual, or certainly wouldn't be opposed by us if there was a requirement that we provide those elevation drawings to the board or your administrator as a condition of your decision.
So then the design review board would have a chance to weigh in on actual designs? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, we met with the design review board months ago,
Right.
gave them our drawings and our plans. We met with them. They gave us a very exacting list of suggested architectural changes.
Right.
We then instituted those, or agreed to what we felt was reasonable and doable. So I then gave them a specific listing of that with an updated rendering plan.
Okay.
They just want elevation plans, which are
Right.
a
So it
design
was just the
plan.
elevation piece that was missing?
What's that?
It was just the elevation piece that was missing?
The revised elevations. We haven't done them.
Okay.
Or-
See some of the changes in the renderings.
Yeah, so what I would say is, in the draft decision that we started, there is a section there that talks about the outcome of that design review board and what they had requested from the applicant. So that would provide some information for you to see exactly what they had asked for, and then what the applicant had submitted in response to that. So I think there are a few outstanding things.
But in the end, it looked like, just as Shane said, to extent, it could just be another condition
I
to
agree.
meet,
Yeah.
is to, provide elevation drawings, at the perfect time, for this.
I mean, ideally, it would be helpful if the design review board could meet again, even after the decision is final, just to allow them to review, board to review together the changes. So, that would be amenable to the board and applicant.
So the buildings that were getting close, the two buildings that were within the 25-foot, with the porches and whatnot, what was the conclusion on those?
We've shown you both, and actually on the lower plan there's a gray hatched area for a proposed alternative location of unit 1 and 2. It was the intent to let the board choose which they desire. We've defined the waivers and setbacks that would be required for both.
There was no change from the last meeting, there wasn't like any decision to say, okay,
No,
move it
it-
all out and just put it to bed and not have it in there, so we don't have to.
Yeah,
do waivers.
if you recall, we discussed, well, we could move the building out of there. It would be a flip-flop with some of the septic components. So it would be up to you, like, how you would like to proceed with that. And the plans are drawn to allow people to wait so the decision can easily reflect which is the board's prerogative on that.
There was a request from the Conservation Commission to find out whether it would be blockage of migration paths of through that area? Are the porches elevated? So that
Yeah, they are. If you look at the top plan, the locust plan here, unit 1 and 2 are actually not set the furthest back. There's over 100 feet between the property line and the dwellings. I would have to imagine that most creatures would use the open space that being provided between the development and the dwelling there, but still in excess of 100 feet is quite a bit. I mean, it's far in excess of the required zoning setback there.
have you had any meetings with Board of Health?
We've not.
I think that the question of the porch was more based on, it's 100 feet from the property line, but not 100 feet from the wetlands.
Correct. So
I think that was the question.
yeah, so it could be, the question was, can we position unit 1 and 2 for the dwelling itself to be offset greater than 25 feet from the wetlands?
Well, no, I know that one, because I know it was a flip-flop. I think he was asking with the porch.
Yep, and so the
Raised.
porch, the exact number is escaping me right now. There's only a corner of this, it's actually a deck, an open deck, that would be within the 25-foot buffer zone in that scenario.
Okay.
I assume that's a solid structure to the
Yes.
ground. It's not elevated there.
The deck is elevated,
It is.
yes. It's story up.
Story up.
Story
It is. They are.
So it's
They are elevated.
It's second story.
Yep.
So is that the sum and extent of the initial update? Because you mentioned that Attorney Costa wanted to speak on something, so if we're, any questions from the audience as far as what I discussed tonight? Before we go to the next section.
I just have
Okay,
one
yep.
more question on the altered layout. Excuse me. So the septic tank and the pump need to be relocated in order to move the buildings forward?
Correct.
Why is that?
To meet the minimum setback to the dwelling itself.
And that's a Board of Health requirement?
It's both, as we discussed in the last meeting, the septic tanks were originally laid out to meet both the state and the local Board of Health requirement. Moving the unit, they would still meet the state. They would actually be almost double what the state requires. The Board of Health requires septic tanks to be offset 50 feet from wetlands, and we would have to have a portion of one of the septic tanks within that 50-foot setback. I believe the number was 40.
That to be put on the side.
It would be off to the side,
Off to the
yes.
side.
Yeah.
Again, you said you meet the state, but it would be Board of Health?
Correct.
That's
Correct.
encroach on it.
Yep.
But the offset to the dwelling, that's a state requirement to meet that minimum?
It is both, but yes, the state has a requirement. The tank needs to be offset 10 feet from the dwelling, and the local Board of Health, I believe it's 15 feet, slightly in excess. I can look it up if it's a concern tonight, but when we moved the buildings forward, we did not have sufficient room to keep the tanks where they were.
And how did you determine how far forward to move the buildings? Like, you can't move the building, because that was one of the questions in the Concom letter, about, is there any possibility to shorten those driveways anymore to even pull further out of the 25?
Our intent is to provide adequate parking in each of the driveways.
So it's 3 ways to park.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that there's parking for the dwellings of each residence there, beyond just the garage that's being utilized.
not compromise the parking for the unit holders out with a way, trying to move it to keep everything out. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, that's the question.
Well, yes, the parking, we're trying to provide a minimum of 2 spaces per unit. And we're able to meet that by holding that distance.
Is it in addition to the underground parking?
No, so there's a garage space and then a driveway space for each. And that's outlined on one of the plans that see this parking table on there.
Any other questions? No, so, Attorney Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I don't have an update so much as I wanted to sort of better introduce myself. Doug had introduced me at the last meeting, but you have a bigger crowd here than you did a few weeks ago. So I'm Adam Costa. I'm an attorney with the firm of 19mar19. Mr. Chairman, you asked Doug at the last meeting if I was a litigator, and the answer was yes, and the room went silent for a moment, and then he sort of moved on. So I don't know any of
I
that.
said, what I asked is a litigator or so it was one of both. I think you were both. We gave you credit for
both.
you caught back.
My practice is in part litigation, but I also represent municipalities across the state. I sit and represent boards like yours. I got involved in this project rather late. I'm a latecomer. I've only been to, this is my second meeting. I became involved because the applicant became concerned when it heard, for example, that the selectmen had spoken out in opposition to the project and had expressed those concerns to the zoning board of appeals. I've seen this in other communities. It becomes a concern of applicants when they learn that the board's appointing authority has suggested that a project be denied and they don't believe that it should be. So, but I don't want to be that menacing presence in the room. The applicant has certain rights. If the applicant believes it needs to proceed before the Housing Appeals Committee based on a decision that issues, if it's a denial or conditions it feels it can't comply with, it'll do those things. But that's not been the narrative so far. I've spoken with Doug. He's updated me on the project. I've reviewed all that's occurred over the past 5-6 months now. The objective here is still to continue to work with your board. We're hopeful that we can get to the finish line with this project. We think that it's a better project now than it was to start, and that modifications have been made that have been consistent with the feedback we've received, not just from your board, but from design review and from conservation and from the various other boards and departments and officials that have chimed in on the project. So it's still our objective to work with the board. My presence shouldn't suggest otherwise, but applicant brought me on saying, get familiar with the project in the event that we need to pursue this further. So with that, I'll turn it back to Doug.
No, certainly no problem with using whatever resources available to solicit or to advocate in parking. So no problem with your presence, that's for sure. Just for my
Appreciate that.
question here.
Yeah, actually, this is not so much a question. I'm Howard Johnson. As long as the attorneys stood up and made his little introductory and non-threatening, and I would like
I want
to.
to cut you short for a second. Just address.
I live at 436 Dover Road. It's directly across the street from the proposed project. After coming to these meetings for these past several months, I'd like to thank the board members for their hard work and dedication. It's a difficult job. We all appreciate what you do. Kristen Collins of the Sudbury Valley Trustees, among others, have pointed out that the Stewart Commons property is part of a complex of wetlands and protected lands that provide important ecological services. Our house sits on a ridge that runs down to the stream and wetlands that also border the northern side of the Stewart Commons property. You can see the little stream on top of that rendering. From the back of our property, you can look out over the stream and the wetlands and over Bolton Flats to the Still River, not far from where it flows into the Nashua. We watch as the waters connecting the Still River and the wetlands rise and ebb with the seasons and the weather. There are times when the water is so high that the Still River overflows the banks, flooding Bolton Flats all the way to the wetlands and stream at the bottom of our property. It's like watching Mother Earth's great pulmonary system at work. It's also a habitat for an amazing array of birds and animals. I invite all of you over to see for yourselves how this is all connected and how sensitive the Still River Commons property is. Failing that, I suggest you take a look at satellite photos of the area around the proposed site. The developer cites that the benefit of the project and the reason for granting the comprehensive permit is to increase in the affordable housing stock in Bolton, when in reality that increase is negligible. The harm to the environment and the ecology surrounding this property and the flora and fauna supported by it is very real. No one will benefit from this project except the developers. Not the community, not the neighborhood, and not the residents of the project who will be left with the responsibility for maintaining and paying for all the systems and safeguards, and who will suffer along with everybody else if these systems fail, as all systems eventually do, or if conditions change and the systems and safeguards are no longer sufficient. Not to mention that accidents will happen, the consequences of which could be severe, considering the sensitive nature of the area and the surrounding property. This has the potential to affect not only the environment and the ecology, but the groundwater supply for the local residents. The site is surrounded by water and wetlands, and of the approximately 6 acres constituting the site, only the proposed construction area of approximately 1 acre is not wetlands. Of the 1 acre buildable site, they are proposing covering basically all of it with the residences, roadways, septic systems, and the like. The term paving paradise comes to mind. My neighbor Rick Brown has mentioned how we are all stewards of the land for the generations to follow. What you do with regard to this project is part of our legacy for those who come after us. Many have spoken out about this project, including our Board of Selectmen, our Conservation Commission, our Planning Board, our Board of Health, various boards and commissions from the town of Harvard, and various environmental and conservation groups. No one, except the developer, thinks this is a good thing. When you come to balancing the supposed benefits of the town's affordable housing stock with the serious and well-documented concerns about local health, safety, and open space, as well as with the site and building designs themselves, I hope you agree that our local requirements are necessary to meet these concerns, that no conditions attached to a comprehensive permit could protect those concerns, that the standards required of the board by the statute and the HAC have been met, and the comprehensive permit should be denied.
Comments, observations, any other?
Martha Remington, 447 Main Street. I have a question that I may have missed. Are these units going to have single or double garages?
I believe they're single.
We all know that if there are two people living in a home, they each will have a car. Where will the extra parking be? Let's see, we have 8 units, so that would be at least 16 cars. I think that's reasonable, unless there happen to be a lot of single people living there. Has that come into question at all about where they're going to park? Because both won't fit in the garage.
But we're speaking
Yeah,
to
I
a budget
think
that's-
we just covered that. There's a garage space and at least one driveway space for each unit, so that would provide the 16 spaces referenced in Mr. Remington's comment.
The driveway is the second space. So we were just speaking about potentially pushing the houses front so they wouldn't have to put they could be on 25 foot setback. Consideration was the driveway space needs to be used, kept as is so that they can have the second parking.
Right, and one more question. Will there be individual plowing there with snow blowers, or will the condominium commission have someone plowing there? I mean, how's that going to work in this type?
The condo association will contract with a snow removal company or snow plowing company, and they'll do the whole facility under one contract.
So they do the private road as well as the parking spaces.
They'll do the roadway and the parking.
Any idea where snow would be put?
That's my question.
There are sufficient landscape islands throughout, or they don't have actual plants in the lawn areas that have planting on them. We detail that on the landscape sheet. There's hatched areas. It's the last page of your plan set, and that shows where that is, and there's notes related to that as well.
So you could be pushing snow with chemicals in it, aren't you? protect the area. That's what
We had previously spoken, one of the earlier Conservation Commission comments was related to the use of de-icing chemicals, and we've only asked that the use of those chemicals be regulated the way they would be to any of the surrounding properties in the same area. So that I don't believe the applicant's opposed to any type of prohibition on those or limitation on those.
Who would monitor that?
It would be part of the condominium association, and one of the components, when we go over 4 dwellings, we're required to meet the state stormwater management standards. A surrounding single-family home would not be subject to this. So we have operation and maintenance procedures that have been submitted for any of the stormwater management systems. So there's deep sump catch basins, there's areas to accumulate these within those, and those are subject to routine maintenance that the homeowners association will be responsible for.
Don McFarland, I live in Stowe, Boxborough Road and Stowe. I wanted to pursue your question.
Tom, where did you say you?
Boxborough Road and Stowe, but I'm also involved with the Friends of the Oxbow, which is right where the water's going, in fact. But anyway, you mentioned it's a 1-car garage, and then there's a parking for the second car potentially. What happens if people have visitors? Where do they park? Typically, condominiums have a visitor parking area, if you will. I don't see anything on there. So where do you park?
Many of the driveways are in excess of their required length to allow for stacked parking of additional vehicles.
And that wouldn't hamper emergency or anything like that getting in there?
No, we've actually had this plan vetted by the
I know that.
fire and police. However, I want to remind the board, your town actually has parking regulations that require a certain amount of parking for different types of housing. And we in fact meet your town bylaw requiring required parking. So we're being held, we're meeting the same standard that every other home or condominium in the town is required to meet.
Steve Ignatz, 19 East End Road. You had mentioned early in the meeting that the Design Review Committee had asked for elevations. Do we know at this point what the project looks like on the site? How it fits within the context of the Still River Road neighborhood and the other properties? I just from a point of aesthetics, I've been kind of following this, and I still don't know what this project looks like, and I just wonder if you guys have seen.
We've seen renderings.
That's a good point. You may want to put them up
Do
over there.
you have a color sheet there? Anything larger than that?
Yes. Clip it up,
Nice.
So at this point, the Design Review Committee has been responding to that drawing and plan drawings. Is that my understanding? Is that correct? Okay. And the elevations, which would show a lot more detail, and in essence, the aesthetic of the thing. That's something you're still waiting for.
No. We submitted renderings, elevation drawings, site plan drawings, all with our original filing, that all went to the Design Review Board. They made their review and meeting with us based on all of that
Okay,
information.
but with all due respect, I was at that early meeting. Those were for a Chelmsford project. I remember seeing from another project that was brought up, it said this project was built someplace else. And those were the drawings that were submitted for this. I was just wondering if drawings for actually this project, have, even in the schematic stage, have been presented accurately.
But the elevation drawings we presented were accurate. Just because we built that project in another location, we were proposing to build that same building here. The Design Review Board reviewed all of that, and as I said earlier, gave us a very specific list of requested changes, and some of them were like, expand the roof of the porch 6 to 12 inches, wrap the molding around this particular section of roof around the roof. We had proposed stone on the backdrop of the front doors. They asked us to wrap that stone around the entire extrusion, I guess, for lack of a better term, where the front door went. There was a whole bunch of specific requests like that. We agreed to integrate nearly the entire list, and I gave that list to them. What we haven't done is actually paid an architect now to go back and modify the elevation drawings to show these minor architectural changes. Quite frankly, that is a very expensive proposition, and at this point, we need to know whether we have a project before my client continues to do final designs, final plans, final anything. I think I think it was to his benefit and credit that they accepted almost the entirety of the list of specific things. Now to require us to change the drawing to show that little 6-inch extension, again, the cost, and given that we don't even have a project, is prohibitive at this point.
And Joe, just not credential, but in terms of the comprehensive permit process, there's not going to require that level of specificity in those drawings yet because it's still a preliminary project.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. The requirement under the regulations is for preliminary scaled architectural drawing, and that met that requirement.
I just offer that from Joe's perspective. Joe's our consultant peer review with regard to the 40B process, and while we would all love to have as robust drawings, information, the 40B process, it doesn't always lend itself to us requiring.
With all due respect, this is a single lot for a single family residence, and the applicant has come before us looking to put 8 single family units on it. That should require, maybe not in statute, but in just common sense. We should really know what's going on. We're going from 1 to 8. And I'm looking at the elevations there, and that rendering, and I'm still not sure what this project's really going to look like. It looks like an awful lot of buildings being put in a very small place to me, in the middle of a very highly sensitive wetland area. Say no more. I mean, it was like an elephant in the room, and we're all dancing around it. Look.
We've seen it. That's why we're here, and that's why we're spending the time we are. So we take it seriously, and we're working the process. It's not as easy a process to just say on any application, particularly if they're all interesting, all the 40 we've done in town. There's probably a chance we could have said on all of them, deny them, because is the impact on affordable housing great enough to have them? But that's not the sort of mandate the state puts on us. So we're doing the best we can to get as much fact to make it as best a project that we can then make a decision on. So none of the things you said are lost on us, but from a historical perspective and just current, the expectations probably not going to be met that we get everything we need to have a true picture of the project and still be able to manage the process within the 40B requirements imposed on us. So.
Yeah, again, Eric Johnson, you talk about your mandate. Your mandate is twofold.
Right.
It's the need for affordable housing in the area, but it's also the express concerns consistent with local needs
Correct.
that are expressed in the statute and in the regulations. This isn't just any piece of property. Point out another 40B project in town that is surrounded on all sides by water. The only thing that's keeping this from being not a complete island is still River Road itself. I mean, to be intimidated by the statute, to be intimidated by lawyers is just foolish. This is a different piece of property. You just pointed out, everything is unique. And each one of the criteria that has been, the concerns that the statute addresses, there's just a ton of evidence here. I mean, the statute, the regulations talk about well-documented. You can't get much better documented than this. This isn't just any other piece of property.
And we've said all along, we concur with that. I don't want to be characterized, we're not intimidated by either the current attorneys or necessarily the state. It's just that the point about specificity of information, getting all final sort of documentation. I'm saying that is an unrealistic expectation of the board to require, because it's not, it won't further us in the
Oh,
process.
absolutely, I agree. You have more than enough information to base your decision on.
So that's what I'm saying. So when someone is asking for, let's get the elevation. Well, it's not. Well, it'd be great to have them say, yeah, we'll provide those. We could sit here and.
Oh, yeah,
back and
the
forth,
devil's
and
getting lost in the
We'll never get
details.
to a conclusion where we do have a defined time before the state could step in. In some respects, if we just had a continued delay, we have probably constructive denial that someone could make a case for. So we don't want to get to that point. We want to make that decision and take into the facts that are presented.
But it's also important to bear in mind that, as pointed out by the Board of Selectmen, who are our elected representatives, the town is prepared to do everything that's necessary to fight this.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that is an important factor for you to bear in mind. We've met the statutory criteria, we've met the extremely high standards set by the HAC. You know, Joe has been through thousands of these, and while he can tell you 999 of them that they don't look favorably on the ZBA denial of a comprehensive permit, there are the ones that the statute's designed to protect. And this piece of property is the property that the statute's designed to protect. And the town is prepared to do what it takes to protect that.
There. On the back.
Jonathan Keep, 752 Main Street. I share other people's concerns about the parking. If you think about tandem parking and your relationship with the person you live with, you know, your husband or wife's going to come home and park in the garage, and you're going to park behind them, and then you know, you have to kind of do a song and dance to get out. It just doesn't seem like that's really workable or well thought out. And then some of the units have an extra bedroom, so you can imagine a teenager. So I'm just wondering what the covenants are in terms of how many cars per unit, and I just worry that a lot of people are going to be parking on the cul-de-sac because it's easier. You won't have to move a car to get out in the morning if you parked in the garage. So are there any covenants related to the number of cars and to parking on the cul-de-sac?
Yeah, that is a concern of mine also, accessing a state highway in the morning. X number of cars is another public safety issue, I think, particularly in the winter. But, you know, there it is. If you have 25 cars in there instead of 16, that could be another problem.
So, Seth, do you have any information toward that question? Or I know, looking at what we've seen, you know, we're saying 1 to 2 per, you know, at least 2 spots per house. You're looking at 45, 50 trips per day in and out. But again, we don't have a total number of cars that you would anticipate, and what happens for, overnight gas when people are coming in.
We just make
Do
sure.
the worst cases, item on, it's, can handle X number of cars versus not.
Well, as Attorney Shane mentioned, we're meeting the town's requirement for each dwelling. And some dwellings do indeed have extra parking incorporated in their driveway areas as well.
Would the applicant be willing to set a maximum within the condo's rules and regulations for the number of, cars that each owner could potentially have? I mean, that's not unheard of. I live in a condo development, and we have that in ours.
I think as long as we're meeting your town requirements, we should be held to that standard. Otherwise, you'd be treating our project different than anyone else's home.
Do you want to
any
treat
other
it different on
project in
every other
town.
respect?
I guess I'm trying to understand what you mean by that, because currently our zoning doesn't allow for multifamily housing, so therefore we're silent when it comes to.
Well,
parking
you have a
requirements.
requirement that it's 2 parking spots per dwelling.
I think we're silent on residential parking. I'll have to take a look.
Question, would you consider restricting parking on the cul-de-sac itself? Or is it, I can see a real problem in a snowstorm where people run out of parking and end up parking on that.
I think it's typical in most condominiums that during snow events, you're prohibited from parking
Is that
outside.
in the agreement?
Outside of your,
Is that in the
Your
condo
unit.
agreement?
but it can be.
They have to get out of this spot to clear the driveway, because they have to go the road in the driveway, so there has to be some type of plan to move people in and out. and just get into the spaces, I would think.
I would think so, yeah. But obviously, there isn't one now. So.
Sharon Johnson, 436 Still River Road. I'm wondering what sort of signage, if any, there might be on the road or on the property. I mean, the project has a name, and I'm wondering if that's going to be on a sign that's right on the road.
We have not made provisions for a sign. If we were to do so, we would have to permit it through your permitting authority, whether it's building inspector, planning board,
Board of Selectmen.
Board of Selectmen. We haven't sought any waivers from any of your sign bylaws in any way.
So would they have like a private road name for the access in, or how is that the way?
Just the complex, right?
Is that the way, does Bolton require a name to the driveway?
Not for a
Just
driveway,
driveway.
but we have, developers have requested it in the past and we've granted them. There's a common driveway that's being built now and they requested to have a road name, so the fire department worked with them on that.
Well, for example, we have Pondside, we have Sugar Road, there's a name, so, but
They're larger developments.
larger developments, Sunset Ridge, so they all have some type of name for emergency services and things like that, but again,
We're not proposing any signage like that, but I see no issue where if your fire department thought it would be helpful or other safety felt it would be helpful to name the private way or provide a monument sign for the project itself. We're not adverse to that, but we haven't proposed it.
How will the post office know what address it is?
Well, it's been my experience that the post office tells us what we're supposed to do in terms of whether they will give us a Still River Road address or otherwise.
Normally, it's a planning board function. I'm not sure how it is. So this is not on the planning board, so I'm not sure.
It actually, it comes from the building inspector, so when they would submit their building applications, the building inspector, who in turn is Bolton, actually, it actually goes to the fire department, and then they issue the numbers. So, but whether it's Still River Road, I assume it's Still River Road.
As did we, but
Yeah.
again, I think if the fire department feels that naming the common drive to give it its own identity and then house numbers, we're not adverse to that. Again, our experience has been, we don't usually get to say. We're told by the fire department what to do.
Joe Piccarello, Barnhill Road. Need to go back to the elevation drawing. Does that show the actual mounding of the property with the elevation of the houses, or that just a general flat look without the mounding that's going to be there? And then with the actual elevation, after you show relation to the existing trees that are there, the height of the buildings above the existing trees, if there was actually a proper elevation drawn with the mounding in the tree location?
The architect appears to have incorporated some of the grading in that rendering view there. I would have to imagine that the tree line is completely just his best take on what's there. There's been no
behind it.
Is that a rendering of the site of Bolton, or is that a rendering of a similar site
Site
in
of Bolton.
Chelmsford? Okay.
Because behind yours, there's all trees behind my property and their property, there's all pine trees between them, and I'm just curious how high above the pine trees they'd be. There's any elevations, what we see from the roads, with the existing trees, with the, what was the design board, was that couldn't show any of the mounding or elevations and trees, and I know it costs money to draw the proper drawings, but, you know, it's very key for the town to see what's going to actually going to look like, opposed to just having blue skies behind a bunch of houses with not actual elevations with, you know, trees and things. And are they going to put any total poles with lighting on that? Any pole lighting for the units? Any kind of?
If I recall from the documentation that they were going to have house lighting, not pole lighting unless it was required by safety.
Yep.
That's correct?
That's true. Wall-mounted lights.
Wall-mounted lights. So,
Excuse me, this may be premature, but I just have a question. Let's say the project that's being approved. We have requested, I have requested for the Historical Commission that any objects of history or archaeology be recovered somehow. At what point will we approach that process so that important things that are found when the earth is disturbed would be collected? And that was just a generic question.
So
when will that happen?
We're starting, say, working on an outline to a decision. In there is one item for one of the conditions that we would consider in the list of conditions. And again, this is based on hearing over the meetings time, so picking out as people have recommended something, or whether it be from a peer reviewer or from force of witness. But we do have one. The applicant shall be responsibly notify the Historical Commission of potential Native American artifacts observed in the field during construction for identification, retrieval, and preservation of these artifacts. So the wording, whether that's the right wording or the timing, we can put more around that, but it's not, right now it's definitely listed on our list of things to consider.
That's wonderful. If we could just say Native American or early American, because there were brickyards up there and there may have been farms up there or mills or whatever that we don't know about. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So one of the items we wanted to try to tackle tonight was get through all the updates, any new information, and maybe start walking through the draft decision. I don't know if you've seen the preliminary draft.
I have not
because we're
forwarded
still.
it. I actually even the latest version I haven't sent to Joe yet, so I didn't know how the board wanted to handle that. I have a couple of extra copies tonight if you want me to hand it out to the applicant and to Joe.
Well, yeah, I think it would help us because I don't know whether we'll go through it tonight. I think we would probably request the applicant give us a couple-week extension at least, where we can then have just a meeting on walking through. We did ask our town council to look at it, and they've given us some initial feedback that we're going in the right direction as far as documenting the decision, but we haven't had any substantive feedback from them. So I think it'd be beneficial to the board to get that substantive feedback, as well as I think we start fresh on the meeting, diving right into let's go to the decision versus trying to now incorporate last minute letters and things into it. So with that, I would see if the applicant's amenable to a couple-week extension. Where we could hold a hearing on reviewing a decision and go through the list of waivers that are in here, filling in those holes.
Mr. Chairman, is it the intention of the board to at least begin that process tonight?
We have another item of business at 8:15 on another comprehensive permit matter from a previous comprehensive permit. So I don't know, it seems like we could walk through. I think procedural history is fairly solid. The governing law is solid. Finding of facts, I think it's solid as far as, trying to get a good overview of what's coming in front of the board and what we're seeing, But I think once we get to the waivers, that 2, 3, 4, 6 pages, we won't make substantial headway by 8:15 when we have our next item.
Mr. Chairman, it's the first chance we've had to see this, so I'm
Well,
trying to keep up with you.
Well, I say we're working toward getting it, so it's fairly new to the board members as well.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we had hoped that we would get some work done with respect to the waivers this evening, and in that light, and I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, my clients would consider granting the board an extension of time, in that it would give us this meeting and then an additional meeting to get through this. Are you comfortable that we're going to be able to get through this in one meeting if we grant an extension?
I'll always say that would be the intent, because, I know it wouldn't be productive or prudent to start it now with the intention of thinking we get through all those, unless people just said, okay, the expedient route is to take selectmen's advice or Concom's advice and say just tonight, well, then we could wrap it up. But I'm saying we want to give it a valid look through and make our comments, get your feedback. So if it's going to be collaborative, it won't happen in 15 minutes.
I think we need to try to avoid all the other parts of the conversation and say, for this next meeting, we're only going to go through that.
Well, that was, I'd say we're sort of, unless, I don't foresee, given the dialogue tonight, any new submittals of significant information. So it would just be, okay, now we have this final piece of the puzzle to document, and then, we have our motion, the motion whether to approve, deny, unless there's some reworking or substantial conformity, and then Eric can go back and do a thing. But we also have the benefit of town council, to give us their advice. They have their council, we'll have our council, and it's just button it up.
Mr. Chairman, can we just have a moment to talk with our client?
Sure.
So the fear that I have, I hear you say that you'd like some feedback from your town council. We appreciate that. I think that's wise. You've got 4 pages of waivers here. These waivers obviously shape the project. Without the waivers, without a substantial majority of the waivers, this project can't be built. So we've not really had substantive discussions in the last couple of meetings, and having talked to Doug, there were no discussions prior to that because the project was still in its modification process and becoming what it is today. So we need a better sense as to whether these waivers are something that the board is inclined to grant. And I think that you probably need a sense of that too before you've got something substantive before your council. I mean, the concern here is that we continue this for a couple of weeks. We're back here in 2 weeks. We start going through the decision and we start getting into these waivers and having substantive discussions about whether a waiver can be granted, how a waiver might be modified. We're going to tell you we can't do that with respect to most of these. And then you're going to have to go back to council and get further feedback on those individual waivers. So the crux of this decision is the waiver list. So, I guess what I'd like to see, and I recognize that you've got another hearing tonight, but even if we can take 15 or 20 or 30 minutes and start getting into some of the substance of the waivers so we can get some feedback from the board as to, is the board inclined to grant these waivers? Because you talk about an approval with conditions versus a denial. There's a third option that's just as troubling as a denial to the applicant, which is an approval with conditions or with waiver denials that essentially is an effective denial because the project can't be built. So it looks like an approval, but it's not an approval. So, that's the concern that I have, and I've seen boards do this where they get into the conditions and, that they grant a partial waiver of a condition that renders the project unbuildable. And maybe they don't recognize that, maybe they need to then consult with council. I'd rather not have that discussion in 2 weeks because then you're going to be seeking another 2-week or 4-week extension at that time to get input from town council.
Well, we could also request town council to be at that hearing, and they can be part of the dialogue.
Is the board ready to make a decision on whether or not to accept that alternate layout for tonight? Do you feel like you have enough feedback from conservation before it helps to make that decision?
To me, I thought we were hopefully getting back from Board of Health to say
Okay, so
it's
you'd like
beneficial,
more
it would be beneficial to have on the side versus in the front, if that
Okay.
was where we're going. And I know you mentioned that you plan to be at the next hearing.
I
too,
can ask to
to get that determination, so we would have that, because that would impact which waiver we're going to go with or not.
I feel that we don't have enough information to discuss the waivers at this point. We have feedback from Concom. We really don't have anything from Board of Health. And,
I
this
just
is,
don't know how much more information Board of Health is going to provide, because they've asked
and
several times.
it's a sensitive area, so I think that the waivers are something we gotta really think about before we say, yes, we will grant them, and no, we won't.
Even if they can address that one comment of the shift.
Yes.
That's the one thing that,
So that, and I guess, is the approach, if we have our town council come, we have your collection here, and then that's our intent for the next hearing is to go through that, because we need to know that you're going to grant that time. And if you're not, then tell us that, and then we could say, well, we have to make a decision.
And I think that we need to be clear about what additional information you think you need. Sir, you commented on, these waivers being substantial or requiring some thought. But I also heard the board say a moment ago that we don't anticipate the submittal of really any new evidence, any further updates between now and the next meeting. The purpose of an extension to the next meeting would be to allow an opportunity for the board to talk through a draft decision, engage the assistance of counsel. We're okay with that concept in terms of how the process would play out. But if you need more information, we sort of need to know what that is, because from our perspective, we've given you information over a period of approximately 6 months. We think you have what you need. We've made efforts to coordinate feedback from various other boards, commissions, departments. Some have been more responsive than others. If we need more information, we need to know what it is. We don't want to get to the next meeting to be told we don't have the information we need.
Well, we're a town with basically no sewer system, no water supply, one of 50 communities in the state. Now, you have a very sensitive piece of property over there, and you're asking us to grant waivers that apply to Board of Health and to conservation. And based on that, I don't feel I have enough information.
So do you need additional information from Board of Health or Conservation that you haven't received yet?
Yeah, I think I do. Sorry, but
Well,
I mean, we're getting 2 units of housing, and we're getting 6 condos.
Right.
And that's not going to make a difference to the inventory of this town. So it's a question of, does this developer get to build this project or not? And to me, that would be based on the whole picture, which is if it does no harm, then it's not an issue. We built plenty of 40Bs in this town. It's not like we're holding the gates.
Sure.
But some projects just work and some don't.
I appreciate that. This has long been the debate with respect to 40B, right? The trade-off between the affordable housing and the other impacts to the community. I will say the 40B test, the state test, the test that will be applied at the HAC, the test that gets applied at Superior Court, is not a balance. It's not a, weigh the need for affordable housing against the other important aspects of the project or the project side. It's a question of consistency with local needs, and that sounds like a broad enough term that, well, we've got all sorts of local needs that this isn't consistent with, but that's also not the test. The test is public health, public safety. So I appreciate that. I guess my question to you is, we've made an effort to get whatever feedback. We don't have a direct line to the Conservation Commission or a direct line to Board of Health or a direct line to any of the other boards or commissions or committees. We are told by the Chapter 40B law to deal with the Zoning Board of Appeals. And we've done our best to make courtesy visits to Design Review Board, and we have a notice, wetlands delineation on the site that pre-existed this project. We will make a visit to the Conservation Commission as required with a notice of intent filing. But we can't get information from municipal boards, commissions, committees that you think you need that we've been trying to get for quite some time. So if there's more information you need between now and a further session of the public hearing, we need a game plan for how either your board is going to go about getting that information, your staff's going to do it, or we're gonna have some assistance in communicating with those boards to get the information that we think you need. Because I fear that we're back here in 2 weeks and we hear the same thing. What have we heard from Concom? Nothing. They still say deny all the waivers. What have you heard from Board of Health? No additional feedback with respect to the swapping of the system versus the building footprint within the 25-foot net touch.
But then we decide, then we go through it and say, okay, absent of that information, what is this board, based on the feedback we've been provided by town, by boards, by commissions, then we walk through and we have to make a decision. That's our
basis of the other.
Fair enough. And I just hope you understand that that's no fault of the applicant if you feel you need additional information from Concom or Board of Health that has not been forthcoming.
Information percolates every meeting. Even just the most recent waivers we have in this document, they didn't come at the beginning of the hearing. They came sort of contemporaneous in the last, say within the last month. So because we've advanced the project, advanced, so they finally said, okay, here are the waivers. So it's not like we sit on things and we've been having things. So it is time compressed the last month. I would say the things we've been getting, things have moved along, we've got more information, but nonetheless, we're at the point where we understand we're probably not going to get a large submission of additional data, so we have to make decisions. But there are some final tweaks that we would like our boards to potentially give us information on. And if we get it, perfect. If we don't, then we have the charge to issue a decision. So that's what we'll work on.
Is there anything further that the board believes it needs from the applicant?
I had one more question I wanted to ask related to the most recent letter from Concom. Seth, they had asked whether or not you could maybe look to other locations for that compensatory flood storage to reduce the alteration to the 25-foot buffer. Have you guys looked into that at all?
Yeah, the compensatory flood storage, it's a small depression that's going to provide additional flood storage, more than what exists on the site right now. As a condition of approval, we could certainly fit that whole area outside the 25-foot buffer zone.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
Anything beyond that?
question, Gary.
Lona Balco, Green Road. I think the board ought to stand up for what the town needs on this project and not be intimidated by the developers.
I'll only say no decision's been made at this point. So.
And to your point, I'm not aware of a list of outstanding items on, so at some point we say, these piles of paper, boxes of, support is what we have, and we're organizing that so that we can reference and we have, whatever final items that we can get from what's on our solicitations to take, and then that's it, we run the process, we're at the end. So we've asked if we get the time granted, I've had please have a chance to.
Our understanding is consulting with our client, and we'll have an answer for you momentarily, so.
And have we started looking at those waivers, we would probably be right where we are right now, having to move to the next part of it, so.
Fair enough.
That'll be our that's our agenda, just like we had on the agenda today. 8 or 9, that's what it's so
This is getting old.
Oh, Jesus, this is
We should know that going into the next meeting.
What they don't show, you can come down Warm Hill, and you come down Still River, either way. What is that going to look like? And right now, it's quite a beautiful spot. Bring your car. Oh, yes. You might like that 25 years. And you put down on the structure, going to but you paint them all green. Yeah. With, grass on the roof. You guys
Coming down full throttle. It's just like meeting on 2 hills and then
Mr. Chairman, we're willing to grant the board the necessary waiver to get a few weeks, a couple of weeks here. The extension, rather, I'm sorry, not a waiver, it's an extension. With the understanding that we will all come prepared at the next meeting to work through the waivers and the decision itself. We'll take an opportunity to review the draft we received tonight, and we'll, if we have some comments or suggestions, we'll get them in right away so that you have time to digest those before the next meeting. And as we know, the public hearing will remain open, which will allow us to participate, but it will also allow abutters and people here to participate, which we understand and certainly respect. But I guess I would ask the board that if we come back to another meeting, that we limit public input to new information or information that hasn't been presented or provided before, because as we've seen tonight, we've rehashed a number of things or a number of comments, which again,
everyone has the right to make those comments, but to the extent they become repetitious, then, we're going to waste time. But we're willing to grant the extension, keep the public hearing open, and look forward to working with you to get through this at the next meeting.
Yeah, hopefully, like I say, public is, for us, this is their process, so this is, we're in their town. So to the extent that they want to participate, we'll try to make sure it's point of clarifications, or that it's, get into the substance, but,
We're not suggesting for a minute that the public and people don't have the right to make commentary. It's just that at some point,
we're going to stay on.
I know that the board has the authority to, even with us, you'll limit us to, submittal of something new, or a new point, or a new issue, rather than, time-consuming repetition of stuff that's already on the record.
Can I ask for the next meeting that we try and coordinate it such that we have maybe a bit longer than, I suspect it's going to take longer than an hour to get.
It'll only be our.
Nothing else on the agenda. Fair enough.
Doug, will you be providing that a written approval for the extension?
Yeah, I can get that over to you
Okay,
first thing
before
in the morning.
Before Friday, okay.
Oh, no, I can get it over tomorrow morning.
Perfect, thank you.
So do you have any comments on that? Or standard, right? We're walking the process, right?
Correct.
So can we look at calendars and
Yeah, and as far as the information that I should be getting for the board, so I'll go back to Board of Health. I don't know when their next meeting is, so that's the only thing. About the alternate location and about the waivers. Beyond that, is there anything else that I should be responsible at this point? I think that's the sort of the only outstanding item, right? And then did you want town council? I can ask our town administrator for town council to be present. Did you
Yeah,
want?
I think that would be helpful. I mean,
So Doug, you had said a 2 week extension, or did you specify?
Well, we can, I believe the time frame runs on the 23rd.
Right.
So, and are we looking at holding a hearing in 2 weeks, which would be April 2nd, which happens to be a date that we're all available?
I'm out of town on that first couple of days.
So we go 2 weeks beyond the 22nd, that'll bring you through the end of that whole week, or
So later on that, toward the end of that first week, or was the next week in April is,
I can do the 4th.
I'm on that's a Thursday. On the West Coast, I don't leave on Thursday. And then I'm out until Thursday or Tuesday. Flying out sometime.
You're flying out on that
Thursday, but I don't know.
But you're
It's a long weekend, so I think want to San Francisco. So.
the only time available the following week is Tuesday the 9th. Well, Monday, but you're not going to be there.
Tuesday the 9th.
Tuesday the 9th is a good day for us to,
Yeah, I just don't know if I'll be back on the West Coast back there.
On Tuesday?
Yeah, depending on how the flights issue. So later in that week is not good.
It's the following week's vacation in our car, Wednesday, the following Wednesday. It'll be a Thursday.
School vacation.
And we can't do it earlier this week? We can't do it second? Second's not good?
Oh, no, I can do early in the week.
April 2nd?
April 2nd?
I thought you said you couldn't do it.
No, well, I would be in, I guess I was gone, so then the following week too, so third, fourth, fifth, something like that, allowed until the following Monday.
Oh, so Monday, Tuesday the 2nd you're available?
Yeah.
Oh, that works for us.
That works.
Yep.
Tuesday the 2nd.
Could Erica post that proposed decision or draft decision?
That is not a public document at this point, because the board is just
Once we
beginning their
decide on it, then
deliberations.
it's a public document.
But if it's going to be presented at a public hearing, how can people at the hearing react to something that's been given to the applicant? Isn't that the height of unfairness?
It's illegal.
Counsel, would you mind providing me with a copy of it? Excuse me, sir?
Yes.
Would you mind providing me with a copy of the proposed decision?
You can request it from the town.
As an abutter and a fellow attorney, you won't give it to me?
I think that's right, you can request it from the town.
I just requested it from the town, I'm requesting it from you. Excuse me, board members, this is how they cooperate?
If it's a public document, then the public has a right to access it, they can access it through the town by making a public records request or by simply requesting it verbally. I don't know what the town's procedures are, but I just heard from the town that they're not prepared to provide it to a resident. If that's the case, then I'm not going to hand my copy over, contrary to what the board has suggested. So I leave it to the town and to the board to decide whether the document is public or not.
I would suggest that we seek legal counsel on that question, whether or not we should.
In the future, because in the past, we've always have had town council,
And the
applicant council reviewing it, working together on
right.
it, and our peer reviewers. So while the hearings are open to public, as we discuss the items, you'll hear them, what we're discussing, and you can ask questions on it, but we
But
don't
we
provide
won't
the
see
documentation.
Mr. Chairman, if we could, go ahead.
I would urge you to consult with counsel.
Yeah.
I believe it's a public document. I believe it was a
Okay.
public document the moment that you announced it in a public meeting that it was available, so. But again, I don't want to contradict the board, but I believe it's a public document and I believe it should be made available to the public. It's not my intent to stand in the way.
I'll check
and
with legal
being
counsel.
prepared in the
I'll
public.
check.
And then if it is, you'll put it out.
Yeah, so if they say yes, I can put it on the
So that's a
website.
clarification.
Once town council decides, yeah.
So
What's the date?
April 2nd, 7 p.m.
All in favor?
The whole building and town hall are not available. So let me just check the library calendar.
It's going to be here. Well, she's checking right now.
The bobcat? Yeah, it was too cute. She came right up to this front step. Is your son John? That's my husband. Did I have him in school? Maybe
State is
Jason.
still working on that.
Jason.
On this private?
No, on the hill.
Oh, okay. Good, good. You really gave that money away, you did.
Huh?
You really gave that money away, you did.
Yep.
You're in that old jail, what to do, help him with stuff, that's what you're all right.
I mean, I don't mind helping him out, but God,
What kind of money?
we did a little, I don't know, I just.
He asked about having sign man.
Just give them all the money and we
Motion to
dissolve.
continue the hearing until April 2nd, 7 PM in the library common room.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll get that extension over first thing tomorrow.
Kathy, how was your trip?
We're getting there.
Thanks, Don, for being here. Sorry, but my blood pressure was getting up. Oh, no, it's fine, we're doing great. That's great. I'll vote for you, oh my gosh. Yeah. That was my that's my passport.
Thank you. I can show you.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Kathy.
We'll beat it. We'll beat it.
Supposed to be here, technically
Last couple of weeks.
This delay of 2 weeks comes right out of 40 days.
So, just so you know, the library is closed, so that's in the space open.
Okay, we'll see you all later.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I know, I'm just getting warm.
Because we're not going to stay long, we're just going to say, here, Erica.
He's coming back when we're done.
They could choose to attempt to pause the
I consider it as a review, and what works after. I've been down the road, on the planning board, I've been down the road with these things that went sideways. I'm not real comfortable taking engineers expert.
You know, say we just have to walk through and say, test the cases first.
And I saw they
There's no like easy into it, it's just a big trip. It's like, they only see multiple, they don't see that there and then, so.
photographs here.
Would it help the agency?
Where's the development? It's just,
Something new, I can tell you, especially whenever there's any references.
Well, it is.
We can all look at this, but you can't look at it.
Unfortunately, that's where they put in the septic system. But
No, Joe. So, our next point of business, because I don't tend to think that we actually, because we did have it on the calendar. We have this, so Joe, we have a 40B, Sunset Lane, which is off of, a couple miles from here. So we finally did, on water product, so they finally had their cost certification done, right? And we got a letter, this applicant has a small, what's it, $5,000 left on the bond? $5,000 left on the bond. So to the extent we received the final cost certification, and Eric had some conversations with Mass Housing. So we wanted to, at some point, say, okay, button it up. It's been operational now for what, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? Well, 5. So
It's a long
at some
time.
point release the bond, but you said you had some notes, Eric had some notes about her conversation.
You held a bond?
Yes, to be sure that work was done on, infrastructure, because they had some things that had to get redone, repaved. So we brought it down from, I think it was $25,000 down to like $5,000 now. So.
And right now, the only thing outstanding was the
final cost certification and whatnot. So,
just understand that it could have been challenged as being beyond your purview.
it wasn't. And he's not even here, not that it's on the agenda, but he isn't even asking for it back. He hasn't really called.
I've been chasing him to get the cost certification, so it can just be done with on the project.
So, but now that we have it, we said, okay, we'll put it on as a business item and then just, say, it says that he lost money, it said he lost $1 million, and, so.
They always do.
Back in the day, they didn't require anything for the cost certification, so a lot of they did have. Now the subsidizing agency is requiring bonds. They are getting it now.
Well, we had a bond on the.
We had a bond on the project.
On the project to do the work and to make sure it was done, and it has been tapped into, and, so, but this was the final. Someone just jumped and said, okay, it's done, we can release the bond, but he hasn't asked us to release it yet, but,
No, some of these projects, I know of one project in Kingsborough that started its permitting in 2003 and it's just finishing now. It was 80 units and it took over 10 years to sell it out. So they haven't done their cost certification.
to that point. So we won't dive into it deeply, because Eric has some notes she wanted to offer, so we'll.
So what I'll probably do, maybe I'll just put together a quick little memo based on the conversation I had. So Joe is not available, will not likely be available on the night.
Okay.
I just want to let the board know that.
Abandon ship when we need you. That's okay.
I'm getting hip replacement surgery next Tuesday.
Misery likes company, yeah.
So will I be back by April 2nd?
So do me a favor. or do
Yes,
the-
yes.
Do the board a favor.
Yeah, Eddie was back.
If you have a chance to look through the draft decision,
yeah.
and you have any inputs on, what you advise on, just give us your input, so that we.
And your decision based on prior decisions that worked their way through this board and the town council. So it is, from a format standpoint, it's good, but it's fairly simple. Some of the Copeland and Page formats are much longer and go into a lot of detail that I'm not necessarily in favor of. For instance, if there's a default on a regulatory agreement, it requires that the board and the applicant enter into a regulatory agreement, which is a very unlikely scenario, but Copeland and Page believes that it's something that should be belt and suspenders added to that. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. I'm not going to suggest that you add any of that if you're comfortable with the format, the complement, the completeness of it. But I will look at it for.
So just know when you are reviewing it, the conditions, the only thing I included for the conditions, like Gerard had said, were things that had come up during the meeting.
The artifact.
If they do approve it with conditions, there'll be many more in there. I just haven't included them. And that's something, if the board wants me to start drafting all of the conditions, I'm happy to do that if that'll help you deliberate. It's just, I didn't know.
So in your, those are, the ones that you're talking about will be standard boilerplate, applicable to every single decision that might cover some of the stuff on.
Yeah, exactly. But I have to include it. Yeah.
So in that last, when we come in, like, second, yes, we get what is robust, boilerplate and then specific, because we have a lot of, some of the specifics based on, what's been said by, say, we had historically different, that come in voice concerns, but this, I know there's generally, they give it in the documentation, they say, some conditions from like the boards or what, just.
Do you want me to start adding all the conditions I can think of? That would be
Well,
applicable? Then happy to. I just
Yeah.
don't know, it's in 2 weeks, I'm so busy at the moment, I just don't know how far I'm gonna get, but I'll work on that.
Yeah. And if you want to just send me over a prior one instead of that, kind of in concert, knowing that you're going to pull boilerplate out of prior decisions to supplement. I mean, you've got to next meeting get into the meat.
Yeah.
Are there conditions that could render the project uneconomic?
Well,
Are there waivers in which
you're say if anyone that we don't waive, they'll probably say it's
anyone that you waive, they'll do that. And I'm not. I gave you some information on economic in my letter today. I don't suspect that they're going to claim on economic because it puts them. If they make that claim in front of you at the public hearing, then you're into a whole new chapter of this. I think what they'd rather do, what most applicants do, is quietly take it and then go appeal it. Right. Just see and let that process get vetted out. When they changed the regs in 2008, they kind of envisioned that might happen. We always advise the boards to do this, talking about waivers and talking about conditions within the public hearing, hoping that maybe there could be that public discourse about uneconomic and why you have to grant that waiver, but it just in practice it's not happening.
How many of these have you been involved in the code of court?
Thousands.
Thousands.
Yeah.
But many.
Yeah.
I mean, in Hudson, we took, we denied one and granted two with conditions that ended up at agency.
And did they end up getting approved then?
Yeah. I mean, what normally happens is, if you're close, if it's a conditioned approval in which there are claims that conditions or the grant of the denial of the waiver renders it uneconomic, the HAC will involve you and try to broker a deal, negotiate, and say, well, okay, applicant, what can you give the board to maybe change their mind on this? And there's some give and take. You consider it in the executive session, you then make your decision. The agency then codifies that. So in essence, they're issuing they're issuing a new decision, but it's your decision with a couple of tweaks that you've had some input to. It rarely happens in a vacuum.
They handed it back to us. So, close, yeah, a conditioned decision. They'd be able to work out.
I was involved in one in Falmouth, and they wanted to deny it, but they conditioned it very sternly, which reduced the number of units from 104 to 80. So it was a substantial reduction just by saying you'll pull the third story back away from the street, you'll introduce was just a whole host of things that when you dove into it, was a reduction in units. And got very close to brokering a deal between the ZBA and the applicant. At the last minute, two of the members said, no, we don't want to do it. So now HAC is going to rule it kind of in a vacuum. The board does get to the point where they don't cooperate with HAC.
So is it in your, what I'm hearing is if there are decisions with conditions, but it's somewhat close, chances are they're going to, the court's going to come back like, hey, we got to make this work. I don't see that being the case, in my opinion. So I don't see that. I think there's going to be a lot of no's to waivers and a lot of conditions here. I'm trying to figure out like what makes, if the decision is no on our side, what makes that decision an easier no for the courts to make? You know, is it we make concessions or not? You know.
Yeah. I mean, I would look to Stowe. So if you're really in that mindset to really believe that this is an environmental sensitive, then you've got to really study Stowe, because it's been a rare exception in which the HAC upholds the decision because the local bylaw addressed a genuine, unique concern of the area. Now, in that case, the applicant disregarded the local nitrogen requirements for the wells, and just said,
was that still case?
We need the waiver. We need the waiver. Here, there are no well waivers, and their wells are compliant. Their septic is to a great degree, and they added the fast system for the nitrogen treatment. So I wouldn't draw too many parallels to Stowe. I think it's just kind of in how Stowe presented their decision that was then upheld would be important if you're trying to go down that road. Understanding my role, I work for MHP. Their job is to, their charge is to create affordable housing.
Right.
But at the same time, they want quality affordable housing that's done in a manner that the community works with the developers to get as best a project as they can. Understand 40 is never going to be seen as.
That's the answer. It's not. The process is not perfect. So,
all right. Thank you.
Okay.
Good luck with the surgery. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So for the next, so we won't schedule this at the end. Joe, you have to go out this door? Unless you have to use the men's room.
No.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Yeah. Because the lobby is closed. But anyway, so we sort of gave the background on this just before, and then we'll get your notes. So not the next hearing, probably it's going to be dedicated to these folks. We're going to we'll have whatever.
It'll be the, what about, I need to schedule the hearing for 401 Main Street.
Oh, yeah.
Do that.
So we'll do that next one. We'll do those two things that after the next hearing, so sometime in April. Later April, that flexibility after school vacations and work schedules like.
I'll send it to you a full to schedule that hearing for that 401 Main Street.
Who do I get it?
The builder's profit is
No, they parties, even though they say, yeah, no, we could give them more. Still $800. I mean, themselves, so they certainly
I was amazed at the discrepancy between the regular units sale price and the residential sales.
Yeah, it looks like it was inverted on that document. On one of them, like some metrics on like that.
No, it's more than 3 times your affordable sales prices in the market. So I didn't realize it was that much of a.
So, I mean, when I spoke to Mass Housing about it, they went through it, they didn't see the red flags. So, but I'll give you the notes from that discussion.
Okay, so a motion to adjourn?
Moved. So we have to do something with this?
No, he's gonna give us more information next time, so
Oh.
this is sort of just to put it on the table, let us know it's here. Chance and George will check the meeting, and we just, it's like nothing.
So we're not getting anything done.
Oh, we got a lot done.
We did.
Yeah, I don't know. We cut them off their feet, you know, they're all.
You got criticized. On both sides.
Weak and scared.
Yeah, I definitely want to check with town council about the decision being a public document, because in the past, they've told me that if it's part of your, if you're deliberating still, that it's not technically a public document, so I want to check with them.
And maybe didn't come up in the past, but I know with other draft decisions, as we worked through the process, it was just between
Yeah.
the parties involved.
Exactly.
You know, they had an opportunity to get it when it was decided upon, just like any decision, like we do draft, something, it's not, until we make our vote on it, and then it gets registered, get it, goes to town clerk, you know, so.
And the fact that Joe's not going to be here, I think it's even more important that town council's here now, just in case a regulatory question comes up.
Yeah.
So, okay, great.
Should we vote?
Motion to adjourn?
Janice, that someone's a second, all?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.